What will I be reading? You can feel free to read the top of the screen there. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. My hair is way poofy tonight. Hello, happy Friday. I hope you guys had fun at Rob's stream. I had fun at Rob's stream, and now I'm gonna just read. I'm gonna read a mystery. Hello, thank you for that raid. Yeah, I'm gonna read a mystery. What? Ew, Nancy Drew. Ew, swag. How do I host? If you go to your channel's chat and do /host vbudkey, you will be hosting my channel. Or if you're on the Twitch app, either on your phone or on the iPad app, then you can just tap the little button at the top of the screen there. Thank you so much for all of those shout outs. They're well deserved. If you guys missed Rob's stream, you missed a fun time. Oh, thank you so much for that follow. I appreciate that. So I'm going to attempt to read while this Nancy Drew music plays in the background. If the music is not loud enough, please tell me. I don't want it very loud at all, though. I definitely just want it very quietly in the background. Or if it's too loud, please let me know. But thank you so much for that follow. You're not an... I love you, swag. So much loves. However, I do love Nancy Drew, so... Welcome for seeing VBed. Just kidding. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for the follow. Okay. How's everybody doing tonight? Let's catch up for a sec before I jump into this. I feel like I'm cutting my head off. Or I'm like, I've got way too much headroom. Like, there's no happy medium. So, catch me up, guys. How was your week? My week was incredibly packed and incredibly busy. This is the first free time I've had since, like, Tuesday morning. V-bed-key. Yep. That's my bed. I've got a blanket on my comforter, so it looks kind of messy. I was lounging while I was watching Rob's stream. Your week was too long? Same, dude. I hear you. Your weekend... same, dude. I hear you. Yeah. If you had to choose to kill Rob or kill Nancy Drew... Well, considering Nancy Drew is not a real person, I would pick Nancy Drew. And I don't know Nancy personally. So I would pick Nancy Drew. But don't go like crazy or nothing. Yeah, I'm drinking some coffee in my Charleston mug. Isn't it cool? It's got all these places in Charleston. I go to shows there all the time. I'll be there Thursday. So anyway. Exactly what Summer said. Who would win in a fight, Nancy Drew or the Hardy Bros? It's hard to say, and it depends what about, because Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys working together is the best option. Alright. So, without further ado, I'm going to get started. I'm assuming the music is good because nobody has told me otherwise. I just want it kind of very quietly in the background just to add. You want tea? I got some of that too. I got some of that like fancy English stuff. Hi Raz, by the way. If I could get a... Can I do... I can do a roundhouse kick to the face while wearing these bad boys. Music's good. Okay, cool. Alright, without further ado, we're going to read The Message in the Haunted Mansion by Carolyn Keene. Nancy Drew book number 122. Alright. How many? There are 16 chapters. If I break that up into 3 sections like I like to do for books, that would be 5, 5, and 6. So we're going to try to get through 5 chapters tonight. You can't see the bad boys? Well, I'm comfy. I'm not getting up. Alright, here we go. Hey, Susan. Good to see you. Okay. As you can see from my little thing down here, once I start into a chapter, I'm not going to be able to answer back to you until the end of the chapter. Feel free to chat with each other and chat to me. I just won't be able to answer until the end of the chapter. Alright. Chapter 1. Jinxed. A Victorian mansion in San Francisco. What could be more romantic? Bess Marvin sighed. Her cousin George Fane rolled her eyes. Bess, you're the only person I know who could find renovating an old house romantic. Nancy Drew laughed, crinkling her blue eyes and brushing back her reddish blonde hair. She sat between her two friends in the back seat of a car on a freeway heading into San Francisco. I only wish it were romantic. Sometimes I think the mansion is jinxed, exclaimed the car's driver, Rose Green, a tiny woman with steel gray curls. Nancy leaned forward. Have there been accidents, Rose? Now, Nancy, Hannah Gruen gently warned. She was the longtime housekeeper for Nancy and her father, lawyer Carson Drew. Don't go looking for anything suspicious. We're here to help Rose and Abby with their renovations, not solve another one of your mysteries. Hannah sat beside Rose in the front seat. The two women had been friends for several years. Rose had recently retired from her teaching job in River Heights and moved to San Francisco. She and her niece Abby were restoring a dilapidated old Victorian mansion so they could open it as a bed and breakfast hotel. If there is anything mysterious about the accidents, Nancy will find out, Bess promised, pulling her long straw blonde hair into a ponytail. So what kind of accidents are we talking about? Nancy asked again. Just bad luck, Rose explained. First we had a gas leak and an explosion. Then the scaffolding collapsed. A pipe burst after that. Supplies we ordered didn't come in. There were other things too, wallpaper paste that didn't stick, paint that wouldn't dry, furniture polish that turned into a mass of sticky goo. How frustrating, Hannah sympathized. Nancy frowned. When did the trouble start? Our problem started before we even bought the house, Nancy, Rose sighed. You see, opening a bed and breakfast has been my dream. After I retired, I took my life savings, came out to San Francisco, and hunted for the right Victorian house to buy, but the prices were so high. But you finally found the house you wanted, Hannah said encouragingly. Yes, the mansion was old and in terrible shape, but the price was right, Rose said. I made an offer and it was accepted. But then someone, the real estate agent never told me who, came in with a higher bid and I almost lost the house. Luckily, my niece Abby volunteered to become my partner. With her money added to mine, we were able to match the other bid and we got the house. Rose steered the car off the freeway and onto the city streets. Looking out the window, Nancy saw houses and apartment buildings sparkling with Christmas lights. Any good places to jog around here? George asked. Slender, dark-haired George loved everything to do with sports, the exact opposite of her cousin Bess. Rose nodded. A big park called the Presidio is just a few blocks from our house, and Golden Gate Park isn't far away either. As Rose turned onto California Street, they passed a Chinese restaurant on the corner with a large, brightly lit front window. Rose nodded ahead. There's the house now. Nancy craned her neck to see an old wooden building outlined by green pipe scaffolding. The house's faded brown paint was peeling in long strips, and the front porch leaned at a slight angle. Even the iron ornament on the building's tower, some kind of bird, tilted sadly to one side. I can see we have a lot of work ahead of us, George muttered to Nancy as Rose pulled up in the driveway. Perched on the scaffolding, a man in white coveralls wearing a mask and goggles lifted one hand in a brief wave. Hi, Charlie, Rose called out as she got out of the car. Charlie pulled himself slowly to his feet and came to the end of the scaffolding, limping as he walked. Hannah and the girls got out of the car. Charlie, these are my friends from River Heights. Hannah, Nancy, George, and Bess, Rose said, introducing them. Charlie nodded silently and lifted up his goggles. His eyes were wrinkled at the corners and looked tired. Bess flinched as Charlie raised a large instrument that looked like a gun. Oh, sorry, Charlie apologized gruffly. I used this heat gun to soften the old paint so I can scrape it off. Once the house is restored, it will be beautiful, Hannah said admiringly. With those balconies and all the woodwork in that tower, it's like a gingerbread house. That's just what all that fancy trim is called, gingerbread, Rose said. Builders in the Victorian era loved loads of fussy detail. Those balconies, for instance, aren't functional, they're just for decoration. Charlie turned back to his work and Rose led her friends up the sagging steps to the front door. Shoving the warped door open with her shoulder, she flipped on a light switch. Inside they stood in a grand entry hall with gleaming wood paneling. On their left-hand side was a large curved door with a mirror set into it. 2 more mirrors were built into the wall over carved wooden benches. At the far end of the entry hall, a grand staircase with a carved wooden banister swept upstairs. In an arch beneath the stairs, a glass-paned door led to the back parts of the house. Hannah wheeled around to stare at the front door. This window is magnificent, she exclaimed, admiring the flowers painted on a panel of stained glass above the front door. It is beautiful, isn't it? Said Rose. On a sunny day, the stained glass throws a rainbow pattern on the wall. It's really lovely. Now, if we could just find the right chandelier, She nodded toward the ceiling where electrical wires spouted from a small hole. Nancy noticed the canvas covering the floor. "Are you refinishing the floors?" she asked. But Rose shook her head. "Not yet. That will come last, after all the painting and the wallpapering is finished. We've painted and papered several rooms, but we still have so much work to do." "Originally, we planned to open for Christmas," Rose added. "Now we're 6 months behind schedule. We have to open for business by next summer, or we won't be able to keep up the mortgage payments." Rose smiled bravely, but Nancy thought she looked worried. Suddenly a voice rang out. "Welcome, Hannah, Nancy, Bess, George." Nancy looked around, wondering where the voice had come from. Then the mirrored door opened, and a heavy-set woman about 35 years old emerged, carrying a black cat. She wore a full skirt, a peasant shawl, and hoop earrings. A purple scarf was tied over her long red hair. "This is my niece, Abby," Rose said. "How did you know it was us?" George asked. "You called our names." Abby just smiled mysteriously. "Oh, Abby, don't be so dramatic," Rose scolded her lightly. "It's very simple, George. The mirror in the door is a two-way mirror. I'll show you." Rose turned off the lights in the entry, then went in and turned on the parlor lights. She pulled the door shut behind her. Through the mirrored door they could see her clearly. "Wow," Bess said. "Can I try it?" She slipped through the door into the parlor. "Actually," Rose said, "you can see through the mirror both ways, depending on which room is lit up. Hannah, turn on the entry light." As Hannah flipped the light switch, Rose turned off the parlor lights. The mirror showed Nancy, George, and Hannah's reflection again. "Hey, it really works!" Bess's excited voice came from the other side of the door. "I can see all of you. I can even see you making that face, George." Rose threw open the door. "Come on in." She invited Nancy, George, and Hannah. This is what they called the first parlor. The second parlor is behind it through those double sliding doors. Everyone moved into the parlor. It looked like a crowded antique store filled with chairs, couches, and small polished tables. "It's a bit cluttered," Rose apologized, "but Lewis says this busy look was the Victorian style." "Lewis?" Nancy inquired. A shy smile spread across Rose's face. "Lewis Chandler is an antique dealer and decorator," she explained. "He specializes in the Victorian period. He's been extremely helpful, advising us on decor." Nancy sensed that Lewis was someone special to Rose. "How did you meet him?" she asked. "He just arrived at our door one day," Rose replied. "He welcomed us to the neighborhood and let us know about his shop and decorating services. We can't afford them, but he's kindly given us his help anyway. He's been wonderful." "And very attentive," Abby added, giving Rose a teasing nudge with her elbow. "Abby, please," Rose protested. Abby had a pot of tea ready, and she poured each of their guests a cup. Bess took hers and stretched out on a velvet chaise lounge. "This is so comfortable. Is there much work to do indoors? It all seems finished." "We made a lot of progress this fall," Rose said, despite the accidents. "We got the wiring and plumbing done months ago, and then did some carpentry work. Then we started wallpapering and painting. We did the kitchen, a bathroom, and our 2 bedrooms first, so that we could live comfortably while finishing the rest." "Now the first parlor is done, the entry, and 4 of the 10 guest rooms," Abby said. "The second parlor is nearly done. I just finished the wallpaper there. After that, there's the dining room, the saloon, and the 6 other guest rooms." "The saloon?" George looked puzzled. Rose nodded. "In the basement, there's a big room that's like an old-time saloon. It even has a built-in bar. You see, we think the house was once a hotel. It's hard to tell because the floor plan was apparently changed when it became a private home. 2 sisters, the Armstrong sisters, owned the mansion for years. They died recently. We bought the house from their nephew, who had no interest in it." "I looked up the property in one of the old block books at the library, which show all the old lots," Abby said. "I found out that the land was owned back in the late 1800s by an E. Valdez, but we haven't had the time to do more research." "We'll have to get back to the library soon," Rose said. "We'll have to learn—" I said Rob. Rose said, "We'll need to learn the house's history so we can print up brochures for the bed and breakfast. People who stay in B&Bs are usually interested in old houses and history. The library has several city documents from before the 1906 earthquake, although most records were destroyed in all the fires that broke out after the earthquake. I've been using the library to research old San Francisco theaters, too," Abby added, stroking her cat. "I'm planning an act for the saloon and a seance for Sunday afternoon teas." Bess's blue eyes widened. "Seance?" Abby smiled. "Seances are very popular in the last century, Bess. There's a lot we can learn from people in other dimensions." Yeah," Bess said vaguely. It was hard to tell whether Abby was serious or not, Nancy thought. Maybe we can help you with your research as well as the renovation work, George offered. Rose smiled gratefully. Thanks so much. We're so far behind, especially with the outside work, she said. The heavy rains this fall really held us up. Charlie's had a lot of work to do repairing that wooden trim. Now he's beginning to scrape the paint. We'll actually start painting in a few months when the weather improves. We'll do all we can to help, Nancy stressed. Thank you, Nancy, Rose said gratefully. This hotel is my dream. I can't lose it. Abby patted her aunt's hand. Why don't we show the girls to their rooms, she suggested. Oh, first, can I take a photo? Bess asked. Pulling her instant camera out of her shoulder bag, she quickly posed the group and snapped a photo. As the picture started to develop, Hannah frowned. What's that white cloud? She asked. Bess stared at the white mist at the top of the photo. Why, it looks like a ghost. Probably a reflection of light, Nancy said. Why don't we ask Emily about it when we see her? Hannah suggested. Hannah's friend Emily Foxworth was a photojournalist. Nancy and George had met her on a previous case in San Francisco. Bess put the camera away and Rose led her visitors up the grand staircase. Eventually, Rose explained, each bedroom will have its own theme. The Chinese room, the Spanish room, the peacock room, and so on. That was the Victorian custom. Hannah, you'll be sleeping in the captain's room. You girls will share the Chinese room. Ooh, Bess murmured as they entered their bedroom. The Chinese room was exquisite with red silk wallpaper and Chinese brush paintings. In the center stood a large ornate bed carved with dragons. A cot had been set up to one side. It looks like a movie set, George said. The air seems a little stuffy, Rose commented. Why don't you open a window? Bess went over to the room's big arched window. She slid the window up easily and leaned way out, looking up and down California Street. The bathroom's down the hall, but there's a sink here in the corner if you want to wash up, Rose told Nancy and George. Just then, Nancy heard a snapping noise. Glancing toward the window, she saw it jerk sharply. She leapt toward Bess, grabbing her arm and pulling her back. What? Bess began, but her voice was cut off as the window came crashing down, shattering glass across the floor. Sorry about that. My sister had a question for me. Okay, that was the end of chapter 1. Let me catch up on all your chat. There is so much going on. Okay, let's see. Hi, C. Hello, baby Dan the man. Nice to meet you. I don't care if you drink beer. Do you think that Charlie's gonna be the nemesis? Oh, do you have a brother named Charlie? Summer? There's something suspicious about Charlie. You guys and your Tara, thank you. You guys and your premature suspicions. No Ned talk. Thank you for that host, Heartless, by the way, earlier. Ooh, Hot Pockets and tea! Aw, sorry. Bye, Kareen. I know you're not here anymore, but thank you for being here. Why is there so much crying? Hi, Gloria. Oh, thank you for the host, Semi. I'm trying to catch up, guys. Yeah, I don't know. I was reading Rose, and I also glanced at the chat, and so I saw Rob, and I said Rob instead of Rose. Oh my goodness gracious! I will get back to you in just a moment. You're sleepy, time for milk. Yes, do it. Your mom bought you ginger beer. Heck yeah. Okay. Thank you for the chapter reading bits. Oh my goodness. Okay, Oh, you got the badge! Thank you so much, Riddy. You do have a brother named Charlie, and hi again to Gloria. Okay, good. Alright. No, don't feel pwned at all, Riddy, or at Terror. Don't feel pwned by Riddy. But Riddy, oh my gosh, thank you. I just appreciate that so much. I'm assuming that you guys can still see me. My stream is frozen, but I assume everything's still cool. So, is the music still good? It's not too distracting. I started laughing a little bit because I was just like reading the book, and then like the music from Shadow Ranch when you're doing the Roadrunner game, like the banjo was like dang dang dang, like started playing, and I tried not to laugh. Hey Timo, man, how you doing? Thank you so much for that host. Good to see you. Happy Friday night. All right. Without further ado, I'm going to move on. I'm going to try to get through 5 chapters tonight. So, 1 down. Yes. Tara is the most beautiful girl in the room. Like, obviously. Cool. Then I'm just going to ignore mine and just keep that open for the chat. All right. Chapter 2. Accident or foul play. Bess stared at Nancy, her eyes huge with fright. That window could have cut me in 2, she cried. Both girls were covered with splinters of glass. Large, jagged pieces lay on the floor around them. Bess had dropped her teacup and dark tea stains were spreading across her ivory-colored dress. Rose ran over, her face ashen. Are you girls all right? She asked anxiously. Nancy and Bess nodded. I don't understand, Rose said. Charlie just repaired these windows. He even replaced the glass. She looked at the damage in dismay. I'll ask him to clean up and board the window, she asked, quickly leaving the room. Nancy shook the splinters of glass from her pants, and Bess did the same from her dress. Kicking aside shards of glass, George crossed the room to take a look at the window. Nancy joined her. See anything, Nancy? George asked. Nancy didn't answer right away. She examined the broken sash cords in the window frame, then crouched down for a better look at the sharp glass fragments. I don't think this was an accident, she said at last. Bess looked up in confusion. You mean it was done on purpose? But how? Even if the cords holding the window frame broke, the glass inside the frame should have held, Nancy said. There should be putty to hold the glass in, and there ought to be glazing points too, little metal pieces set between the glass and the window frame, but there aren't any. Nancy pointed at the evidence on the floor. And look at this, Nancy went on, pointing to the window cords. Both sash cords are broken. Even if they were old, they wouldn't break at the same time. And if this was natural wear and tear, the cords would be frayed. These have been cut clean through. Someone wanted that window to fall, said George uneasily. Nancy nodded slowly. I think so, and here's another thing. Nancy stood up and held out her hands. Bess touched Nancy's fingers. Ew, your fingers are all slippery. What is on them? Some kind of lubricant from the cords, Nancy said. They've been oiled to make them slippery. Someone wanted the window to fall fast and hard so the glass would shatter. This was no accident. What about the other accidents Rose told us about? Bess said slowly. Do you think that they were deliberate too? Nancy shrugged and returned to the window. That's what we have to find out. But who could do this? Who would do this? George asked. Could it have been Charlie? Rose said he had just repaired that window. He's the logical suspect, Nancy admitted. We don't have any proof or any motive for him, but we'd better find out fast. If these accidents continue, Rose or Abby might get hurt. They heard a knock and Hannah came in. Rose told me about the accident, she said, looking worried. Were you girls hurt? We're all fine, Hannah, Nancy assured her. Hannah shook her head. Poor Rose, there's just one problem after another in this old house. She looked at Nancy. We need to keep Rose's spirits up. I suggested she take us for a drive and show us some sights. You'll all come along, won't you? The girls agreed, but Bess said she needed to change her clothes first. I want to soak my dress right away so these tea stains don't set, she said. Nancy and George went downstairs to explore the house until Bess, Rose, and Hannah were ready to leave. Behind the glass door at the rear of the entry hall, they found 2 small anterooms, like little hallways. From the first one, a broad carpeted staircase led into darkness. From the second, a narrow set of worn wooden stairs led up. "I bet this used to be the servants' stairway," said George, peering up the narrow staircase. "And maybe these other stairs lead down to the basement saloon." Nancy fingered a latch on the inside of the door that led to the downward staircase. "It's odd that this latch would be on this side of the door," she commented. "Maybe the hotel owner needed to lock off the saloon during certain periods of the day? Anyway, let's go down and look at it." She and George made their way slowly down the dark staircase. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a huge room. A little sunlight filtered in through small, high-ventilation windows. The saloon seemed to run the length of the house. A long bar with a mirror behind it stretched across one end. A few tables and chairs, a small stage, and a grand piano occupied the room. Nancy and George walked over to the mahogany bar. "What a beautiful mirror," Nancy said, pointing at the bar's huge mirror, which had birds and flowers etched into its frame. In the mirror, Nancy saw a movement behind her. She turned to spot Abby slipping furtively away from the piano. "Abby," said Nancy in surprise. Abby whirled around. "When did you girls come in?" she asked sharply. "Just now," said Nancy, wondering at Abby's rude tone. "What are—" Nancy's question was interrupted by a honking horn outside. "That's probably Rose. It must be time for you to go," Abby said. "She's trying to get rid of us," Nancy thought. "Aren't you coming with us, Abby?" George asked. "No," Abby said in a testy voice. "Well, we'll see you soon then," Nancy said. She and George headed for the saloon stairs. When Nancy looked back, Abby was still standing in the center of the room watching them. Upstairs in the entry hall, George said softly to Nancy, "What was Abby doing down there? She definitely wasn't happy to see us." "I thought the same thing," Nancy murmured. George grinned. "Uh-oh, you've got that let's figure out this mystery look," she said. Nancy smiled. "Guilty." They stepped outside where Rose, Hannah, and Bess were waiting in Rose's red car. George climbed into the back seat with Bess. Just as Nancy was about to follow, something caught her eye across the street. A blonde teenage boy wearing an old army jacket stood on the sidewalk, hands jammed into the pockets of his ragged jeans. When he saw Nancy notice him, he turned swiftly and walked away. Nancy narrowed her eyes and watched him go up the street. Then she climbed into Rose's car. Rose drove her guests through the Alamo Square Historic District, where there were many Victorian houses painted in all the colors of the rainbow. At a tall hill called Twin Peaks, they got out of the car to admire a panoramic view of the city. They drove back through huge Golden Gate Park, with its museums, playing fields, lakes, and wooded areas. Rose pointed out an enormous tent standing in a meadow. "That's the pavilion for the Winter Festival next Sunday," she said. "Lewis is on the planning committee. We're going to help at a booth." Next, Rose suggested they stop for an early supper. She took them to the Land's End Inn, a popular spot set atop a rocky cliff overlooking San Francisco Bay. "What a view," Hannah said, pausing on their way inside. "But you couldn't get me in that water. It must be freezing." Indoors, Hannah and Rose made a quick stop at the powder room. While waiting for them, the girls wandered through an exhibit on old San Francisco in the restaurant's lobby. "Look at this," Bess called to Nancy and George. They joined her in front of a group of antique photographs. All the pictures on that part of the wall showed a full-figured woman with blonde curls. Bess was reading a framed article on the wall next to the pictures. "This is Lizzie Applegate. She was an entertainer in the gold mining camps," Bess said. "A bandit called El Diablo fell in love with her. Then one day Lizzie disappeared, and apparently she joined the bandits' gang in robbing stagecoaches." Nancy and George grinned at each other. They knew Bess loved any kind of romantic story. "What happened to Lizzie?" Nancy asked. "She showed up in San Francisco and became an actress," Bess said, scanning the article. "She wrote a play called The Bandit's Treasure about an outlaw just like El Diablo. Later she opened a hotel, but it burned down in a fire. Gee, I would love to live a life as exciting as hers." "Oh, really?" George eyed her cousin skeptically. "Camping out with a gang of thieves in the wilderness? No bath or shower for weeks at a time?" "Maybe not that part," Bess admitted. "But I like the part where the bandit fell in love with Lizzie and then she became a famous actress." Soon Hannah and Rose returned, and the five of them were seated at a window table. They watched a gorgeous sunset while they ate a light dinner of soup and salad. When they got back to the mansion just after 7, a silver sedan was parked out front. "Lewis is here," said Rose, her face lighting up. "Wait until you meet him, Hannah." Rose quickly checked her hair and makeup in the rearview mirror. Inside, the mirrored door to the first parlor was open. As they walked in, Nancy saw Abby and Charlie standing in the second parlor staring at one of the walls. Beside them was a silver-haired man dressed in a dark gray suit. Louis, Rose began, moving forward with a big smile. I want you to meet... Suddenly she stopped and gave a cry. Nancy, Bess, and George followed her into the second parlor to see what Abby, Charlie, and Louis were staring at. The wall was sopping wet from floor to ceiling, with water still trickling down it. The rose-patterned wallpaper hung down in strips. Abby turned and glared at the girls in fury. What happened? Nancy asked. Charlie muttered something, then limped from the room. Louis turned to Rose. Charlie came in to board up the window in the Chinese room, he said. He found a flood there. The water went through the floor and ran down here. Abby's eyes were flashing. I went out, she spat out, and when I came back, destroyed. I just spent my whole afternoon wallpapering, and now all that work is ruined. But how did this happen? Nancy asked again. Someone left the water running in your room upstairs, Abby sputtered angrily. The sink overflowed. Someone didn't remember to turn off the faucet. Nancy's heart sank. She recalled that Bess had been soaking her dress upstairs just before they left the house. She looked over at Bess. Bess's eyes grew wide. No, she protested. No, I know I turned off the water. I know I did. Okay, that's the end of chapter 2. Let me catch up. Woo, for overtime pay. Timo. I like Canada Dry better than Seagram's myself, just saying. Oh, they made a comment about not going in cold water. Would you want to bet someone gets pushed in later on accident? What time is it there? It is currently 8:53 p.m. where I am. Oh, Tara already answered that. Oh no, you should be going to sleep, Ulawu. I mean, I appreciate you being here, obviously, but please don't lose sleep on my account. You can always watch this later on if you want. Alright, cool. I'm all caught up. You guys didn't talk quite as much that time. Alright. Moving on. Let me take a couple drinks of my coffee before it gets completely cold. Nah, Semi, it's okay. Terror. You sweet. Thank you. Aww. Aw, you guys. Quit. Quit being so nice to me. I'm so weird. Sometimes I watch myself back, or I'll watch clips that you guys have clipped of me, and I'm like... Hi, Smokey. How you doing? Why? Oh, you know what? Oh, thank you for that, host Smokey. Okay, moving on. Oh, actually, I have a text from Holland I need to respond to. Yes, I saw the dabbing clip, and I was like, when I dabbed, I immediately regretted it in that stream. So watching it back, I just like cringed every time. I totally looked normal. Yeah, definitely. Oh gosh, okay. I guess I appreciate that you guys still watch me, even though I'm sort of a weirdo. Thank you for that. Oh, do you guys want to see my super cool bookmark, by the way? Yay! Okay. Anyway, this is the bookmark I use for streams because it's like gamey and streamy. Anyway, okay. Hi, Holland text. Yeah, she was asking me questions about Halloween plans, so I was texting her back real quick. Don't be overwhelmed by feelings, Semi. Chapter 3. The Figure in the Fog. Bess's frightened eyes traveled from Nancy and George to the wet wallpaper to Abby. I turned off that water. You have to believe me. Of course we believe you, Bess, Nancy said, giving Bess's hand a little squeeze. Yes, Bess, of course. It's just... Rose faltered, looking around helplessly. Finally, she tottered back to the first parlor and sank down onto one of the couches, covering her face with her hands. What next? She whispered. Coming to sit beside Rose, Lewis took her hands in his and began to speak to her softly. Abby stormed up behind them. Rose, Abby said sharply, they can't stay in the Chinese room now. The carpet up there is soaked through and there's glass all over the floor, but we have no other room ready for them to sleep in. Nancy had the feeling that Abby would have liked to send them back to River Heights on the next plane. The girls can stay in my room with me, Hannah offered quickly. Rose lifted her head. The blue room has that big bed in it, she said, her voice weary. The room hasn't been painted yet, but it is clean. Abby threw up her hands. Fine. The blue room, then, she said to the girls. There's only one bed, but it's a large 4-poster. 2 of you can share it, and we can move the cot. Follow me. In silence, Nancy, George, and Bess trooped behind Abby, heading up the stairs and down the hall. Abby stopped at a linen closet, yanking out pillows, sheets, a blanket, and a quilt. Without a word, she thrust them at Nancy and George, ignoring Bess's open arms. Down the hall, right next to the flooded Chinese room, she opened another door. The blue room, she said. You can bring your bags over. Then Abby strode away. That's what I call the silent treatment, Bess complained, her voice quavering. She wouldn't even look at me. Nancy slipped a comforting arm around her friend's shoulders. The blue room was clean, but that was about it. Strips of faded blue wallpaper hung down off the walls. The floor had bare, worn boards. The furniture was all antiques, a 4-poster bed, a dark wood bureau topped with green marble, and a large mirror. Through an arch on one side, a small nook held a writing desk and a shabby armchair. George tossed a sheet at Bess. Make yourself useful, cousin, she said, and stop worrying. We know you didn't leave that water on. Nancy stuffed a pillow into a pillowcase. I doubt the flood was an accident anyway, she declared. Bess looked up from the sheet she and George were spreading across the large mattress. What do you mean? She asked. I think someone deliberately turned on the tap in the sink, Nancy explained. But who? George asked. Abby and Charlie both were here, Nancy noted. Abby, but why would she sabotage her own house? George asked, grabbing the blanket. I don't know, Nancy admitted, but she sure was in a hurry to blame us for the flood. She paused, thinking. What we need is a motive. We need to figure out why anyone would want to create these accidents. Bess tucked in the blanket at the foot of the bed. Remember when Rose told us that someone else made an offer for the house? She said, maybe that other person wants the house so bad he or she's trying to drive Rose and Abby out. That's a good point, Bess, Nancy said. Someone may really want the bed and breakfast project to fail, so they're staging a series of phony accidents to make Rose and Abby give up and sell the house. But Nancy, there must be other Victorian mansions, George said. Why this one? Nancy shrugged. Maybe there's something about this house we don't know, she mused. Bess clasped her hands together. Yes, some mysterious, tragic secret from the past. Oh, please, George scoffed. Nancy smiled. I think Bess is right. In principle, anyway, she said. Maybe there is some secret about this house. Rose said it was once a hotel, George said. E. Valdez owned the land in the 1800s. Bess remembered. Then the Armstrong sisters lived here. How can we find out more? George asked. We could go to the library, Nancy answered. And I bet Lewis can help us. He's an expert on the Victorian period. Sounds good. Let's go find Lewis, said George, heading for the door. Bess held up her hand to stop her. Before we dive into research, how about diving into something to eat, she suggested. That salad at the restaurant was good, but it wasn't exactly filling. Actually, I'm a little hungry myself, George admitted. Let's check out what's in the kitchen. Bess winced. I'd hate to ask for food right now, she said. Rose is upset and Abby's mad at me, but how about that Chinese restaurant we saw in the corner? Sounds good, George agreed. Let's just move this cot first. When the girls finally went downstairs, they found Rose and Hannah in the kitchen. Lewis had just left and Hannah was baking blueberry muffins for breakfast. The 2 older women smiled when they heard the girls were hungry again and told them to enjoy their Chinese food. It was a short walk to the restaurant. When they entered, Nancy immediately felt as if she were in another country. Chinese scrolls decorated the walls, and the tables were set with elegant sea green china. But the focal point of the room was an immense mantel set over the fireplace, painted a Chinese red. With its large wings and ornately carved wood, the mantel looked like a pagoda, an ornate entrance to some mysterious temple. "Look at the woodwork on that bird," Bess said, nodding at the graceful bird carved into the wood at the top of the mantel. "Nancy, it's a phoenix," George said. "A phoenix?" Bess asked. Nancy nodded. "A mythical bird," she explained to Bess. "Supposedly, after living 500 years, it set fire to itself and died, then rose from the ashes to live again." Bess raised her eyebrows. "Been thumbing through the encyclopedia again?" she teased. Nancy laughed. "Lieutenant Chin told George and me about the phoenix when we worked with him on Emily Foxworth's case," she said. "It's a San Francisco symbol. In its early years, the city burned many times, but each time it was rebuilt, just like the phoenix rising from the ashes. You'll notice that the police wear a phoenix symbol on their uniforms." Nancy, Bess, and George ordered their meal. As they were finishing, a teenage girl in a pink sweatsuit and running shoes came to their table to clear the dishes. Her long black hair was pulled back under a sweatband and her face was flushed. "Just been out running?" George asked her. The girl grinned and nodded. "My mom hates me to work in my running clothes," she said, "but sometimes I barely have enough time to get in a run, much less shower and change." George smiled. "I know what you mean," she said. "Say, maybe we could run together sometime. We're staying just down the street." "That'd be great. I'm Mary Lee," the girl said. "My family owns this restaurant. I work here part-time while I go to school. When are you—" Suddenly she stopped, her eye caught by something out the front window. Nancy followed Mary's gaze. Outside was the same blonde teenage boy that she had seen earlier. Seeing Mary, the boy gave a little wave. Mary saw him, bobbed her head, then threw him a meaningful glance toward Nancy, George, and Bess. Mary looked flustered all of a sudden. What was— Oh, yes, your check," she said distractedly, lifting a stack of dishes. She spun around and hurried off to the kitchen. Nancy looked back out the window, but the boy had disappeared. It was obvious that Mary knew him, Nancy thought, but why did she react so strangely when she saw him? But when Mary Lee brought their bill, she acted as if nothing had happened. She and George exchanged phone numbers, and the girls paid the bill and left. As they returned to the mansion, a thick fog was rolling in, shrouding the neighborhood in a white mist. Inside, the house was filled with the smell of Hannah's blueberry muffins. The girls trooped up to the blue room, exhausted by their long day. Bess and George changed for bed right away. Nancy headed down the hall for the bathroom. Nancy had finished brushing her teeth and was just leaving the bathroom when she halted. A soft hissing noise seemed to be coming from outside the bathroom window. What was it, she wondered. Nancy carefully raised the small window. Above the noise of car traffic, muffled by the fog, she could hear a dog barking, but nothing else. Then she saw it. Floating outside a window to her right was a silvery white figure, half lost in the fog. It almost looked like a body, or a ghost. "Who is it?" Nancy called. There was another soft hiss, and then the figure disappeared. Nancy heard a thud. She waited for the apparition to reappear, but she could see nothing through the dense fog. Then a light shone out from the window right where the floating figure had been. Shutting the window, Nancy crept out into the dimly lit hallway, heading toward her left. She stopped outside a door with a crack of light shining underneath. She knocked softly. After a few moments, the door opened and Abby appeared in a black velveteen robe. "Oh, Nancy," she said, surprised. "Is anything wrong?" "I just saw something. I think it was outside your window," Nancy told her. "I'm not really sure what it was." Abby smiled, arching her eyebrows. "The same thing happened when I first moved here," she said. "I thought I saw all kinds of things. I couldn't explain them. There's definitely an aura about this house, but I'm sure there's nothing outside my window." "I definitely saw something, Abby," Nancy insisted. "Could we take a look?" Abby's smile dropped. She looked back over her shoulder, hesitating. "All right, but quickly," she said. Nancy followed Abby across her bedroom. The decor certainly was dramatic, Nancy thought. A rich-looking red and black patterned carpet, red flocked wallpaper, large gilt mirrors, even black satin sheets, and a quilted red bedspread. Alfreda, Abby's black cat, darted under the bed. Leaning out the window, Nancy heard the barking dog again, but she could see nothing else. She pulled her head back in, puzzled. "I told you," Abby said. "It was just your imagination." As she shut the window, it made the same thudding sound Nancy had heard a minute earlier. "Now, if you don't mind, I was about to go to sleep," Abby said pointedly. Nancy noticed Alfreda pawing at a piece of shiny cloth sticking out from under the bed. But then Abby walked in front of Nancy, cutting off her view of the cat. She motioned to the door, a fixed smile on her face. "Good night," Nancy said. Unable to invent a reason to stay in Abby's room, she went back to the blue room. Bess and George were sitting up in bed. Nancy told them what had happened. "You saw a ghost?" Bess declared. "I think that's what Abby wants me to think, with her talk about auras," Nancy reasoned. "But what I saw wasn't a ghost, and whatever it was, Abby knows something about it." "Nancy, maybe that's the secret of this house, a ghost who doesn't want anybody to live here. Maybe it was some young girl who died of a broken heart and her ghost walks each night." Flinging one hand theatrically to her forehead, Bess kneeled on the bed, pretending to die of heartbreak. She gripped the bedpost with the other hand. Suddenly, the bedpost knob came off in Bess's hand. "Whoops," Bess said, thrown off balance and nearly falling off the bed. Bess sprang back to screw the knob back onto the bedpost, but as she started to fit it onto the peg, she stopped and stared inside the hollow post. Then she gasped. "Nancy? George? There's a key in here." Okay, that's end of chapter 3. Welcome back again. Aw, hams. I need to play some Hamtaro again. Have I read all? No. There's like approximately 600 Nancy Drew books, because you've got like the main series books, and then you've got like the Nancy Drew Files, and the like there's all these like side series Nancy Drew books. No. So as you can see, my Nancy Drews are right there, and then my two shelves meet in the corner, so like after the corner they like stretch back out this way. So I have some Nancy Drews like going this way out of the corner. So I probably have about 50 Nancy Drew books, but and I've read what I have, but I haven't read anything outside of what I have. Abby is so friendly and personable. Is it a bud key? Expert pointing. Thank you. I work out my pointing fingers. Push-ups. Ha! 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 No, that's not true. I'm not as good at part-time modeling on stream, though. So, you've got that. Okay. Coffee's gone. 2 more chapters to get through. I'm enjoying listening to this Nancy Drew music in the background, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know if I can hear it better than you guys, but it's like nice and soft and kind of keeps me going. Oh crap, I shouldn't have said that. No, I'm a criminal. Oh, I'm a criminal. I never learned. Oh no! Sorry for you. Oh, sorry. It's okay, Tara. Okay, chapter 4. A surprise ending. "Maybe this key will unlock the secrets of this house," Bess said excitedly. She pulled a big, old-fashioned key from the hollow recess in the bedpost. George scrambled over to take a look at it. "But what lock does it fit?" she wondered. Nancy examined the key. "If we can find out where the bed came from, that may tell us what the key's for," she said. "Bess, put the key in the bureau for safekeeping for now. And let's not mention finding the key to anyone just yet. Not until we understand what's going on in this house." Nancy couldn't remember falling asleep, but when she opened her eyes, it was daylight. She dressed quietly, slipping on jeans and a hooded sweatshirt. Just as she was leaving the bedroom, George began to stretch and Bess blinked open her eyes. I'll meet you sleepyheads downstairs, Nancy said, and I'll try to save you some of Hannah's blueberry muffins. Bess yawned and rubbed her eyes. I was just dreaming that I was Lizzie Applegate and I was an actress in San Francisco, she said. You're in San Francisco, all right, George teased, but the only acting you're doing is pretending you aren't hungry for those muffins. As she left the room, Nancy saw Abby slip through a door about halfway down the hall. Nancy started to follow, but stopped when she spotted Charlie repairing the window in the Chinese room. Now would be a good time to question him, she thought. From the doorway, Nancy watched him fit the new window pane into the frame. Then he reached for his putty knife, one of several tools hanging from his leather belt. As he turned his head, he saw Nancy. Good morning, Charlie, she said. Morning, he replied gruffly. Charlie, what would make a window crash down like that with such terrible force? Nancy asked, trying to sound innocently curious. Charlie gave Nancy an odd look. Then he shrugged. Crummy cords, that's all, he muttered. Nancy frowned. Was Charlie lying, or had he not really noticed that the cords had been cut? Why hadn't he replaced the old cords when he repaired the window the first time? And why hadn't he used putty and glazing points to hold the window in place before? He was using putty today. Nancy decided to try to get Charlie talking. The more she knew about him, the better her chance of finding out what he knew about the accidents. What work could we help you with today? She asked. If you really want to help, he said over his shoulder, a couple of you girls could chip off the old paint on the woodwork outside, then I'll show you how to sand and prime the wood. Have you restored a lot of Victorian houses? Nancy asked, coming closer. Charlie shrugged, continuing to work. Sure, when I can. I love these old houses, but the work isn't steady. Can't make it without a second job. But there's so many Victorians, Nancy said. I'd think there'd be plenty of jobs around. Plenty of people needing work, too, he said. Besides, he added bitterly, a lot of people won't hire an old guy like me, an old guy with a limp. They think I can't do the job. Well, you've certainly done good work here, Nancy said. The woodwork in the entry hall, for example, that's spectacular. Charlie turned to her. Why, thanks, he said in a softer tone. It takes time, but you've got to do it right. It's like I owe it to the guys who did the work so well the first time around. Well, we're happy to help, Nancy said kindly. I hope we can do the house justice. Charlie nodded and returned to his work. Nancy headed back down the hall, stopping by the door she'd seen Abby use a moment ago. She opened it and found the servants' staircase. She went downstairs and found Rose in the kitchen slicing apples into a large bowl of fruit salad. Good morning, Nancy, Rose said cheerfully. Did you girls sleep all right? We sure did, Nancy said. That bed in the blue room is comfy, and it's so beautiful. Where'd you find it, by the way? She asked casually, hoping for some clue about the key Bess had found. That was in the house when we bought it, Rose said. It's so big, I imagine there's no way to move it out of that room. I suspect it was built right there, in fact. Just then, Bess and George trooped in from the front hall, dressed in jeans and sweatshirts. Bess eyed Rose's fruit salad. I'm starving, she said. Still hungry, Rose said playfully, after gobbling up a platter full of muffins. Nancy, George, and Bess looked at her in confusion. Hannah's muffins? Bess asked. I've been looking forward to them. Where are they? Rose looked confused. Well, when I came down this morning, they were all eaten. I thought you girls must have been the culprits. Nancy, Bess, and George shook their heads. But if you didn't eat them, who did? Rose asked. Hannah said she didn't, and so did Abby. I asked them both. What about Charlie? Nancy asked, curious. Oh, Charlie hardly ever takes time out to eat, Rose declared. Besides, he wouldn't steal anything. He's really a good person. Maybe he seems a little grouchy, but that's just because he feels bad that this project is so far behind. You know, he's even charging us lower rates for his work since he saw we were getting tight on money. Nancy nodded, but to herself she thought, is Rose right about Charlie? Or is she just someone who always thinks the best of other people? One thing was sure, if Charlie was causing the accidents, Rose did not suspect it. Rose leaned against the counter, pondering. Come to think of it, she went on, this isn't the first food that's disappeared. About a week ago, I bought a pie. Half of it was eaten during the night. I assumed it was Abby, but I didn't ask her. She's kind of sensitive about her weight. I can sympathize with that, Bess murmured. Well, it doesn't matter, Rose said briskly, wiping her hands on a tea towel. Can you girls help me carry breakfast into the dining room? Though the dining room wasn't finished yet, Rose had set up a small table there. The girls helped her carry out fruit salad, buttered toast, a pitcher of orange juice, and a pot of hot coffee. George unhooked the latch on one of the dining room windows and began to raise it. Hey, look, she said in surprise. The wall's attached to the window. She pointed to the lower wall paneling, which was sliding upward along with the window. Ah, I see you've discovered the jib door, Rose said. What looks like a window is actually a door that slides up and down. What's it for? George asked. Look how large an opening you have when the jib door's open, Rose pointed out. It's like having an extra door at the back of the house. It helps when you're moving furniture in, and speaking of moving, while we're waiting for Hannah and Abby to join us, can you help me move something? Sure thing, said Nancy. What? Rose pointed at several large ceramic crocks in the corner of the dining room. We bought these to store flour, sugar, and oatmeal, she said. Someday we'll be serving big breakfasts every day, when we open for business. She grimaced. But it's obviously going to be months until then. I'd like to move these crocks into the pantry for now to get them out of the way. No problem, Nancy said. The girls each lugged a heavy crock into the pantry and set them against one wall. Just then the front doorbell rang. Rose hurried out to answer it. Why, hello, Louis, the girls heard her call out happily. You're just in time for breakfast. Come on and join us in the dining room. Nancy, Bess, and George returned to the dining room as Rose entered with Louis Chandler. I'm afraid we weren't properly introduced yesterday with all of that excitement. He greeted them pleasantly. Louis gave each girl a firm handshake as Rose introduced him. Louis took off his cashmere muffler and overcoat. He looked quite distinguished with his crisp white shirt, silk handkerchief, and well-cut dark suit. Placing his briefcase on the table, Louis opened it to show Rose some brochures advertising the next Sunday's Winter Festival in Golden Gate Park. I'm very grateful to you and Abby for offering to help at my booth, he said. It's the least we can do to repay you after all the help you've given us, Rose said. Louis covered Rose's hand with his. Your friendship is repayment enough, Rose, he said. But then I think you know that. He added softly, leaning toward her. A glow spread over Rose's face. What kind of festival will it be? Bess asked, interrupting the twosome. A holiday arts and crafts fair, Louis told her. There will be music, dancing, and refreshments. Various artists and small shop owners like me will display their wares in their booths. Since my merchandise is all Victorian antiques, I'm trying to convince Rose to dress as a Victorian lady. Ooh, do you need anyone else to help? Bess spoke up promptly. Nancy, George, and I could wear Victorian costumes too. George shot Bess a stony look, but Louis seemed very pleased at Bess's offer. Yes, that would be grand, he said. There are several vintage clothing stores on Sacramento Street near my store, he said. You ought to be able to find some suitable costumes. Speaking of helping out, Nancy put in, we'd like to help Rose and Abby research this house's history. Any suggestions where we could start? Louis rubbed his jaw, considering. It's hard to say, Nancy, he said. The fires after the 1906 earthquake destroyed just about all the records. Why, Louis, Abby said, suddenly appearing in the doorway. The public library has lots of old records. Old telephone directories, insurance maps, that sort of thing. Last time I was there, I picked up a booklet on how to research your house at the library. Yes, you're right, Abby, Louis said hastily. The library does have a... Let me start that over. Yes, you're right, Abby, Louis said hastily. The library does have a lot of old records, but perhaps you girls ought to focus on the work here first before getting bogged down in time-consuming research. Rose and Abby really need your help here at the house. But Louis, Rose said, looking puzzled, I've been wanting to get this research done since we bought the house. We should have a full history of the house put together before we open. You told me that yourself. Well, yes, of course, but... Louis started. Then his smile returned. I guess I'm just so eager to see the physical work on the house completed. But I agree it might be useful to have the girls visit the library. He waved a hand briskly. Sorry I can't stay for breakfast, Rose, but an important client is coming to the shop. Louis placed his brochures back in his briefcase and kissed Rose on the cheek. Rose blushed and Louis laughed. That's my blushing Rose, he said. Rose blushed even more. Rose walked Louis to the door. Nancy frowned as she watched them go. She felt sure that Louis had known the library held those documents. Why was he trying to prevent them from doing the research? After breakfast, Abby, Hannah, and Bess went to work in the second parlor, stripping off the wallpaper that had been soaked the day before. It's the least I can do, Bess said, even though I know I didn't cause the flood. Abby threw her a forgiving glance. Don't worry about it, Bess, she said. We believe you. Nancy and George went outside to help Charlie. The day was overcast, gray, and cold. Sitting on planks up on the scaffolding, Nancy and George began chipping the thick paint from the woodwork on the upper gable. By noon, their arms ached. When they stopped for lunch, they took off their work gloves and found blisters on their fingers. By the end of the afternoon, George's arms were sagging. "I'm beat, Nancy," she moaned. "Me too," Nancy admitted, "and I'm cold." Just then, Abby shouted up at the girls from the sidewalk below. "As long as you're up there, could you straighten the ornament on the tower?" Nancy raised her eyes to the top of the tower where the ornamental bird sat, tilting at an odd angle. "Okay," she called down. Slipping her paint scraper into the pocket of her jeans, she gripped the edge of the roof. She threw one leg up and over the roof's edge and with aching arms lifted herself up. She tiptoed across the shingled roof to the tower, holding her arms out for balance. Wrapping her arms and legs around the cone-shaped structure, she began to shimmy her way to the top. With numb, sore hands, Nancy inched her way up. Finally, she reached out to grasp the wrought iron bird. A shout came from below. Nancy looked down and saw Charlie gesturing frantically. Suddenly, Nancy felt the tower roof begin to give beneath her. She spread her arms and legs even wider, trying to distribute her weight better, but it was no use. The tower gave a final tremble, and an instant later, Nancy went crashing through the roof. End of chapter 4. Trying to catch up. This book is hurting me. I miss my Charlie. Yeah, the Charlie in the game is so different from Charlie in the book. They definitely changed Charlie. After Toria Readstream finishes, because Toria Readstream is phenomenal. Thank you. I thought you girls did it. Y'all be pudgy. Hi Storm, how are you doing? Good to see you. Hope you're having a great Friday night. Thanks for being here while we're just hanging out and chilling. Lewis is creepy. Aw, thank you. Go to the library, kids. Library. Stoned look. Well, I guess we know it's been eating all those muffins. The Waverly Academy music. Hi again, Susan. Just like chapter 4 said, that was really an unexpected ending. Oh, you're talking about your Charlie. Your brother Charlie. Okay. Oh, thank you, guys. Y'all are the sweetest to me. Look at y'all's bit count, though. Heck, y'all. Gosh. I can't keep up with y'all's kindness, y'all's generosity. Oh, gosh. Y'all are the freaking most generous people I've ever met in my life, and I thank you so much for it. Like, I'm about to be, like, super aggressive here with my thank you, but, like, I never would have thunk that this whole Twitch thing would become something that is so near and dear to my heart, and that you guys would become people that are so near and dear to my heart. And I do this because it's fun. I'm freaking reading Nancy Drew and playing Pokemon and Paper Mario and playing Nancy Drew and reading Lemony Snicket and among other things, and I'm just like having fun, and you guys are like, you know what, you're cool, and you give me all of this, and I can't. Thank you for being you, and thank you for being so wonderfully wonderful people. Just thank you, okay? I love you. And I don't deserve your kindness. So thank you so much for giving it to me. You're awesome, Riddy, and yes, Terror. Playing Nancy, reading Nancy, being Nancy. Thank you for loving V Nancy. V Nancy loves you guys back very much. Ah. dudes. Y'all gonna make me cry. Stop. Thank you. And yes, Ulawu, I'm the same. OMG, all these bits. Look what happened by aggressive. Y'all. Let's read our last chapter for the night. I'm good. Thank you. That was really cute, I'm sure. I'm trying not to cry. Thank you. Chapter 5. The Golden Gardenia. Nancy's hands clutched at thin air as she plunged through the roof tower. She landed with a heavy thud, shingles and wood crashing around her. Stunned, Nancy remained motionless as debris kept raining down from the roof. Then everything was quiet. She unfolded her arms and legs and sat up. Her right hip stung, but a quick check told her she wasn't seriously hurt. Brushing off her face and clothes, she stood up and looked around her. She'd landed in an unfinished attic space full of dust and cobwebs. Next to her was a large black trunk. Beside it stood a small green writing desk. Suddenly, Nancy heard George's voice calling out to her. "Nancy, are you all right?" Standing on the trunk, Nancy waved an arm through the hole in the roof, hoping George could see her. Then she jumped down and scanned the bare floorboards, hoping to find a door that would lead to the house below. Kicking away the dust, she saw an old rope handle attached to a trap door. Nancy tugged at the handle, but the old rope split in her hands. She pulled the paint scraper from her pocket and edged it around the crack between the door and the floor planks. A tapping noise came from the room beneath. "Are you all right?" A voice below called. I can't read now, I'm so flustered. Nancy recognized Rose's voice. "I'm fine," she called back. The door finally loosened as Nancy pried at it with the scraper. At last it gave way. Nancy opened the door to find Rose staring up at her. "Oh, Nancy, are you all right?" Rose gasped. "I was in this room measuring for curtains when I heard a crash." "I'm fine," Nancy assured her, "but I don't think the roof is in such great shape." Just then, Hannah and Bess rushed into the room, still holding their glue brushes. When Hannah saw Nancy standing above the trapdoor, she pressed a hand to her heart. "Thank goodness you're okay," Hannah exclaimed. "We heard George yell. I didn't know what had happened." "I told you the roof wouldn't hold weight." Charlie's angry voice broke in. Nancy saw him rush into the room too, with Abby and George on either side. "Abby, I told you specifically the other day that no one was to go up there." "I just thought you meant I shouldn't," Abby protested defensively. "But Nancy's so light, I thought maybe she could just straighten the ornament." "The whole finial, the bird, the base, and everything needed to be removed and repaired properly," Charlie insisted. "You can't just give the bird a little shove and expect it to stay in position. Nancy could have been killed." "I'm fine," Nancy called. "And I've made a discovery. This tower is an old attic. There's a trunk up here and a little desk, too." Rose leaned over to peer up through the hole. "Why, we thought the turret was just an ornament like the false balconies," she said. "We don't have real house plans. They disappeared long ago." "As long as I'm up here, let's lower the desk and trunk and take a look," Nancy suggested. "I'll get ropes," Charlie growled. "And a crowbar," Nancy added, "so we can pry open this trunk, please." Soon Charlie returned with his toolkit, several coils of rope, a sheet of heavy plastic, and a staple gun. With his guidance, Nancy fastened the rope securely around the trunk and small desk. She lowered them slowly through the trapdoor into Charlie and George's arms. Then she took quickly tacked the plastic over the hole and jumped herself down. "I have to go," Charlie said abruptly, checking his watch. "I have to be somewhere at 5. He nodded goodbye and limped away down the hall. Excited by their discovery, the others hardly noticed his leaving. Bess and George pried open the trunk first to find a pile of elaborate gowns from the 1800s. "Ooh, we could wear these dresses to the winter festival," Bess said, holding up a pink brocade gown, then a crimson dress with black trim. "We'll look incredible." George stifled a little groan. Nancy tried to lift the lid on the small desk. "It's locked," she announced. "It's locked." "Oh, Nancy, what about the key we found in the bedpost?" Bess suggested. "I'll run and get it." She flew from the room. Abby looked up, frowning. "What key?" Wishing Bess hadn't said anything, Nancy told Hannah, Rose, and Abby how they'd found the key. "I wish you'd told me," Abby scolded. "Rose and I need to know about every nook and cranny of this house." "Oh, Abby, I'm sure the girls meant no harm," Rose chided her. Bess returned with the key. They all gathered around as she placed it into the lock. "It fits!" she exclaimed. Nancy turned the key and lifted the lid. The desk was filled with old papers. She picked up a letter from the top of the pile, scanning the elegant writing. "This letter is dated 1883. "Let me see," said Bess. "Be careful," Rose said as Nancy handed it to Bess. "That paper's so old it's crumbling." Nancy inspected the other papers in the desk. "I'll bet this desk hasn't been opened since the turn of the century," she marveled. "All the dates on these papers are old. 1897, 1894, 1882. There are notebooks and photographs, too." "This is like finding a time capsule," George said, gazing at the old documents. "Maybe these papers will tell us the history of the mansion," Nancy said hopefully. Rose suggested that they move the small desk down to the first parlor where they could examine the papers better. Nancy and George carried it downstairs for her. Because it was dark outside by then, everyone cleaned up and met in the dining room for a quick supper. Then they hurried into the front parlor to open the desk again. Another fog had rolled in, bringing a damp chill. George built a fire in the fireplace, and Abby and the 3 girls sat in front of it, spreading the papers from the desk on the carpet. "Let me know if you find anything juicy," said Rose, settling down at her sewing machine. "I'm going to finish these curtains up for the upstairs hall. I've had my fill of leafing through old papers. I went through all my old letters last week to get started on writing my Christmas cards." "I'll help with the curtains, Rose," Hannah offered. Bess was flipping through a stack of photographs. "Nancy, look at these," she called. Nancy took the photographs Bess handed her. They were all of the same beautiful blonde woman, dressed in different costumes, sometimes even men's clothing. "Maybe she was an actress playing male parts," Nancy suggested. "Here she is with a cute little white dog," Bess went on, handing the pictures to Nancy. "And here she's with a Chinese man." Nancy studied the photo carefully. "Isn't that the entry hall staircase she's standing on with all those people?" "You're right," George agreed, looking over Nancy's shoulder. "Maybe she was the owner of the place when it was a hotel. All these other people in the photo could have been her employees." Abby had moved to the settee with another pile of papers. "This is just what I need," she called out. "These are scripts for old melodramas and songs, and look at this playbill." The girls crowded around Abby. The playbill advertised a play called The Bandit's Treasure at a hotel and saloon called the Golden Gardenia. "The Bandit's Treasure," Bess said. "That's Lizzie Applegate's play." Abby looked at Bess. "Lizzie Applegate? She was a famous actress," Bess explained. "I read about her at that exhibit at the Land's End Inn." Then she snapped her fingers. "That's it. I knew this blonde woman looked familiar. Nancy, George, doesn't she look like Lizzie Applegate?" She held up one of the photos. "There is a resemblance," George said. "If this woman is Lizzie," Bess went on, "then this was probably Lizzie's hotel." "The exhibit said she owned a hotel after she retired from the theater," Nancy remembered, "but it said that the hotel burned." Just then the doorbell rang. Rose got up to answer it. "What a beautiful tree!" they heard Rose exclaim from the entry hall. Nancy and the others turned to see Louis walk into the parlor, a huge Christmas tree balanced on his shoulder. "When I purchased a tree for my store, I thought of you, Rose," he said, setting the tree down. "Oh, how thoughtful, Louis!" Rose gave Louis a quick peck on the cheek. "And oh, wait until you see what we found!" Louis's eyes gleamed when he saw the small green writing desk. He began to examine it with a professional eye, stroking the leather lid and pulling out drawers. "This is quite a discovery, Rose." "And see what was inside," Rose said. Lewis knelt down to look at the historical materials, his face becoming still and serious. He moved from one stack of paper to another, his eyes scouring the old documents. "Let's take these photos to that table in the second parlor," Bess suggested to Nancy and George. "We could put them together in a photo display for the entry hall. Abby, didn't you say that a lot of bed and breakfasts have historical displays in their lobbies?" "A photo display in the entry would look great," Abby agreed, looking up from her scripts. "We think the blonde woman in this photograph might be Lizzie Applegate," Bess said to Lewis. Lewis looked up from the papers he was examining. "Lizzie who? Who's that?" he asked. "We saw an exhibit at the Land's End Inn about her," Bess explained again. "She was a famous actress in the late 1800s. After Lizzie retired from the theater, she opened a hotel. We think this house might be it. There's only one problem, though. Lizzie's hotel supposedly burned down." Lewis smiled at Bess. "Fascinating. Rose, I think you found your historian." "Tomorrow we're going to begin researching the house at the public library," Bess added. "Yes, so you mentioned," Lewis said, looking back at the photographs. "Well, this will make a charming lobby display, but of course you have to complete the renovation first. As you know, time is running out." Nancy thought she saw Rose flinch as Lewis reminded them of their situation. Just then, Abby broke out singing. Holding one of the songs from the desk, she sang to the tune of "O Susanna." "I'll wait for you by the golden gate and hold your treasure true, where the rainbow ends in Christmas gold and the phoenix rises too. Oh, my love, ride far and fast for me. I'll wait in your Babuena town in a house high above the sea." "Oh, how romantic!" Bess exclaimed, clapping her hands. "I have a book of old California songs downstairs on the piano, with a history of each song included," Abby said. "This song might be in it." "I'll go get it," cried Bess, dashing out. "Be careful on those stairs," Abby called. "There isn't a light." Turning her head, Nancy noticed a spark fly out from the fire. "Watch out," she said, swiftly stamping out the spark. "George, you'd better keep an eye on your fire. We really should have a fire screen." Rose nodded. "You're right, Nancy. Abby, before we use this fireplace again, let's go get a screen. We don't need any more accidents." Abby nodded, still wrapped up in the play scripts. "I bought some fire extinguishers yesterday. There's one in the hall, one in the pantry, and another upstairs," she said. Suddenly, Nancy heard a bang, like a door slamming, then running footsteps. Startled, she looked up to see Bess in the doorway, her chest heaving and her eyes wide with fright. "I saw her," Bess said in a whisper. She swallowed hard. "I saw Lizzie. Lizzie's ghost." Dun dun dun! End of chapter 5. Let's catch up. Oh, it's okay, Susan. I didn't cry. V, you're so precious. Oh. The unexpected part of the chapter 4 ending was the fact it wasn't the ending at all. Nancy, you clever so-and-so. Welcome back, Raz. Aw, R.I.P. RJ. I hope my reasoning for not being present is ever I'm measuring for curtains. Never I'm measuring for curtains. I don't want to be such a bad liar. And leaving again. Bye, Raz. Thanks for being here. No. Oh, thank you for the host, E. I didn't see the thing. No, George is a girl. George is, she's got, yeah, George and Bess are cousins. They're girls. On the cover here, George is the one with the shorter black hair. It's short for Georgina, I think is her full name, but they just call her George for short. She's more of the tomboy of them. And so, like, on the cover here, so we've got George and Bess are the cousins. Bess is the blonde and Nancy's the reddish blonde. Or Tishan is officially her hair color. But anyway. I've met Girl George and Boy George. Karma, 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 chameleon. Not even know why I'm saying most of the things I say. The music was perfect for that moment. Which moment? I wasn't listening to the music while I was reading the chat. I wasn't paying attention to the music while I was reading the chat. What, did we have a perfect music moment and I missed it? So that was how many pages? That was 50 pages I just read. Let me see how many pages is the next 5 chapters. About 48. And we'll read to the end. When the girl said she saw the... Oh, really? Georgia. Okay, Georgia's short for Georgia. I couldn't remember what her full name was. I thought maybe it was Georgina, but I think you're right. It's Georgia. The first president was Georgia Washington. Does any of you of the indie fam, could you tell me what song was playing at that end? I wasn't really paying attention. Anyway, thank you guys for hanging out. That's where I'm going to call it tonight. I know I only went for an hour and a half, but the book streams are a lot of talking, and so I feel like I would get a little worn out if I were to go too long with them. So I'm on a Nancy Drew kick, I will be honest. Tuesday morning, I played The Silent Spy. I started The Silent Spy. I haven't played Nancy Drew. I haven't played Nancy Drew since... Oh, goodness. Since I did Alibi in Ashes, which was months ago, because I played Tomb of the Lost Queen with Holland, and she did the clicking. I played Deadly Device with Mom. She did the clicking. I played Ghost of Thornton Hall with Holland. She did the clicking. So The Silent Spy is the first Nancy Drew game I myself have played alone since Alibi in Ashes, and it rekindled the Nancy Drew love that I have. So I'm on a Nancy Drew kick. So if you guys don't mind, what I'm planning to do until I finish the rest of the Nancy Drew series is I'm going to do this back and forth. So the next stream I do will be Silent Spy, and then I'll do the next stream after that will be more chapters of this. Then I'll go back to Nancy Drew game, and then blah, 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 blah. Once I finish this book, I will be going back to Lemony Snicket for book streams, but I'm gonna plow through the last 4 of those. I'm gonna plow through the last 4 of the Nancy Drew game series. I've been playing... Nancy Drew is what I started streaming, and I've been streaming for officially 18 months now. So if I can't get through the entire series in 2 years, I'm going to be very upset with myself. But, so I'm just going to plow through the last 4 because I have missed playing Nancy Drew. And I know that a lot of you guys, especially in the last few months as I've started to grow a lot, and make new friends that aren't necessarily Nancy Drewers, I really hope that you guys don't mind that I'll be playing so much Nancy Drew in the next couple weeks. But I do love it, and I do want to finish the series so that I can focus on more things. And I'll occasionally revisit Nancy Drew, so don't get upset or worried that if I finish the Nancy Drew series, that'll be it. Because I'd like to revisit it, replay things, you know, as people requested, or as I'm in the mood for a certain Nancy Drew game, I'd like to go back and replay it just for fun on stream. So don't be worried about that. But I do want to just go ahead and finish the series since I have missed it so much. I'll watch it back, yeah. Thank you guys so much for your support. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. I will not be around tomorrow, so I won't be voice chatting with Rob during Saturday Morning Sleuths, and I'm sorry for that, but I am going upstate just for a day trip. I'm going to this huge corn maze. It's like the biggest corn maze in the state, so I'm going up to do that for the day, which will be super fun and very fallish. Oh no, I'm sure they won't, Terror. I'm sure people are going to be super excited about that. I know that I have a lot of new followers that don't know Nancy Drew at all and have followed me for Pokemon or Paper Mario or book streams, so I just want to preface that this is what I'm planning to do over the next couple weeks. So if you guys don't want to watch Nancy Drew, that's cool. I will be back with more Pokemon and Paper Mario shortly after that. Mind we shall love it. Yes, I will love it. I will love to watch you play Saw and voice chat with you if you still allow me to do that. Okay. Uh-oh, will others be there talking? I don't know. I know Sarah kind of has his baby now, which congrats to Sarah. I know she's not here, but like, dude, she's a mom now. It's so crazy. It's so weird how like somebody can go from being a not mom to like a mom within like a couple minutes of like having a child. It's so crazy. She's a mom now. So congrats to Sarah, Sweet Cupcakes 92. So I would totally understand if she does not Saturday Morning Sleuth. It would be I think other people in the Nancy Drew fam, if you guys want to join Rob, I'm sure you guys can work that out with him. That would be funny, Tara, if you did that. That sounds like amazing big big day trip. You don't want to. Oh, are you gonna voice? Riddy, are you gonna voice with Rob? Oh, I'm sad I'll miss it, but that'll be amazing. I'll have to catch up. Anyway, with that being said, I'm rambling now. But I will say goodnight to you guys. Please enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to leave you with a few more minutes of Nancy Drew music to kind of wind us all down. But thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed. I enjoyed. I've just been streaming what I love lately, and so I just love that you guys are cool with that. So streaming has become a way for me to relax instead of making me feel stressed like I have to deliver something to you guys, because your support has been so unconditional that I just appreciate that. I'm a pro Danner by now. That's true. Alright guys, have a wonderful night. I'll see you guys soon. As always, much love from me to you. I'll see you guys later. Bye now.